Here in the present, every expression, this is your power. Be your every color. Show me another. This is your power. Be you are in motion. Be here in the present, every expression, this is your power. Be
Hello, hello, hello. Let me make sure that this is all functional and we will get rolling in just a moment. Gotta wait for the shift to happen on the browser. I could just look at OBS, but I think OBS... Okay, there it goes. Cool. Everything looks good. Audio should be fine. So, Esteban played this a little while ago. Actually, I think it's been a week or two, I think. But I am also going to be playing this. I remember watching this game be played before, but it's been so long that I don't remember right now. I might remember things as I go, but we'll see. Yeah, Akalia Maya gifted this to us, said it was a must play, so both of us are getting this in, and we figured it would probably be entertaining to do it on stream. Dean, if you do want to commentate or anything, I'm in Discord, but no worries if not. Oh, hello. Hello? Uh-oh. I see you're in here, but I don't hear you. Yeah, I'm sure you'll get it fixed. I'm gonna get rolling. Make sure audio is on. It is.
I'm going to do the exact same thing that I did with Esteban, which is to say I probably won't say much until the end, and then I will try and
Hi
let
there.
you speak, but
Thank
I
you
might
very
also
much
just
for
start
playing the
monologuing
Beginner's
like
Guide.
a motherfucker.
My name is Davey Reedon. I wrote The Stanley Parable, and while that game tells a pretty
that's
absurd
Doug
story,
Doug's brother.
today I'm going to tell you about a series of events that happened between 2008 and 2011. We're going to look at the games made by a friend of mine named Coda. Now, these games mean a lot to me. I met Coda in early 2009 at a time when I was really struggling with some personal stuff.
I'm starting to remember
And
this game
his work
more.
pointed me in a very powerful direction. I found it to be a good reference point for the kinds of creative works that I wanted to make. So just to start you off, this is, I think, the first game he ever made. It's a level for Counter-Strike. You can walk around here, by the way. And mostly it's just Coda learning the basics of building a 3D environment. But what I like is that even though he starts from the simple aesthetic of a desert town, he then scatters these colorful abstract blobs and impossible floating crates around the level. And of course, it destroys the illusion that this actually is a desert town, and instead this level becomes a kind of calling card from its creator. It's like a reminder that this video game was constructed by a real person. And it kind of makes you wonder, what was going through his head as he was building this? This is what I like about all of Coda's games. I mean, not that they're all fascinating as games, but that they are all going to give us access to their creator. I want us to see past the games themselves. I want to get to know who this human being really is. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. So, it's 2008, Coda starts making these games, and he never releases any of them. He doesn't put them onto the internet, he just makes them and then immediately abandons them, and they sit on his computer forever. And I think he really understood this image of himself as a recluse. At one point, he jokingly renamed his computer's recycling bin to Important Games Folder. So, this was just how he worked. He tended to crank them out one after the other without even really pausing to try to understand what he had just made, until suddenly one day, he just stopped. In 2011, that was it. He made his last game, and then he hasn't made another one since. And that's why I've taken this opportunity to gather all of his work together, is because I find his games powerful and interesting, and I'd like this collection to reach him, to maybe encourage him to start creating again. And if the people like you who play this also happen to find his work interesting, then I'm sure it'll just send that much stronger of a message of encouragement to Coda. So thanks for joining me on this. If you have a particular interpretation that I haven't mentioned here, or if you just need to get in touch, you can email me at daveywreden@gmail.com. Okay, that's about it for introduction. Let's take a look at Coda's first proper game. As each game is loading, I'll show you the date that it was completed. This first one was made in November 2008.
I would have been 8 years old. That's not
Whisper
what.
machine active. Shift destruction imminent.
Yeah, I can shoot.
This game is called Escape from Whisper, and it's one of the more generic games you'll see from Coda.
My character feels too tall for the things I'm walking through.
Wrong question.
Yeah.
Security call breached. Hostile alien life form inbound.
Oh, okay. That's nothing.
It kinda looks like this game was abandoned mid-development. For instance, you have this gun, which you'd think would indicate that there are supposed to be monsters or enemies somewhere, but then clearly there are no enemies anywhere. You can't even reload the gun when you run out of bullets. But
I just
ultimately,
tried
we
to do
don't
that.
really know. Maybe Coda thought that actually it was complete the way that it is. And I think that we should talk about his games for what they are, rather than for what they're not.
Enemy force
It's
neutralized.
open.
Begin ship evacuation.
I love how you can see the bottom of the universe from this room.
Yeah. I was actually gonna try and jump out there, but there's glass. Still have bullets.
Apparently, this space station has a labyrinth on it. Sure, I don't know. There's really no reason for it that I've ever been able to discern, so in the interest of time, I'm just gonna skip you on past it.
No!
Okay, this is the part that's interesting. The game has this narrative about the Whisper machine and how it has to be turned off, and then you get to the engine room.
Hey, you there, in the engine room. You could save us all. That beam is powering the Whisper machine. We could disrupt it by introducing a great enough heat signature. If your body could stop the beam. It's so much to ask, but for all of our lives, would you do it? Could you give yourself?
Hell yeah!
Let me pause here for a second. What you just experienced, stepping into the beam and then dying, is probably what Coda had initially intended when he was developing this level. But when he first compiles and plays it, something goes wrong. There's a bug somewhere. And this is what happens instead.
What? Yeah, I could see how that would happen.
The beam causes you to start floating. And this is an important moment for him. Because yes, this is technically a glitch, but Coda identifies something human about it, like how small it makes you feel in the face of this larger chaotic system. Or this floating could be the afterlife, a peaceful place, juxtaposed against all of the hysteria that you've just had to traverse. I don't even know. I have no idea what he was thinking, but what's clear is that after making this, something lodges itself in his brain. He wants
see
to
the
do more of
room
these really
lines.
weird and experimental designs. So he stops work on this and moves on to a stream of tiny little games that go in all sorts of directions. Let's go ahead and take a look at the first game he made after leaving this one behind.
Interesting. I can't. Oh.
Yep, in this
Oh.
game you can only walk backwards.
Interesting. Okay. Ooh, those are. Wait, what? One sec. I wanna look. Interesting. Okay. What?
So it's a short and relatively minimalist experiment combining motion and narrative. It is less advanced than the previous game, but actually it seems to be more focused, more complete. Code is trying to give it a unique voice rather than simply basing it on a pre-existing trope.
What? Nope. I'm blocked
It's a
out
short
again.
little thought, it says what it wants to say, and then it ends. Didn't need anything more than that. Which to me is why it works, because it gets out quick. Okay, next one.
Definitely liked that one better than the first one. Whoa, this is like tank controls or something. Or maybe not tank controls, but you're very slidey. I am now entering. What am I? Oh, I heard something. Oh, I can't. Okay. I'm just gonna try and walk off there, but I can't.
And that's it. Okay, the meaning of this game won't be clear just yet. Please be patient with me for a few more games, and I promise you'll see what makes it interesting. Oftentimes, Coda would put bizarre titles like this one at the start of his games.
Whoa.
I wish I'd known him at the time that he was making these early games. He would really only talk to me about his work as he was making it. Once he stopped work on a game, that was it. It was dead to him. And I don't agree with that at all, but what are you gonna do? I know it's tempting, but there's actually nothing over here.
Damn it.
Sorry.
I thought for sure. Oh, it slowed me down. No. Come on.
Once you've been slowed to an absolute crawl, the door at the top of the stairs opens. So why, if Coda's not showing these games to anyone, why bother opening the door at all? Well, to show you, I'm modifying the game here so that when you press enter, it'll bring you back up to full speed so you can enter the door for yourself.
I feel like I could make it at this speed too. Like I'm still making progress, but do I want to commit that amount of time? Yeah, let's just speed up. I doubt it makes a huge difference.
You impatient son of a bitch!
Oh, I can't go back to the other. Press U to
A
surrender.
room that's warm and nice and filled with little ideas for games.
Stand on an X. Wait. At a bear for 3?
Coda would often
Or
tell
s-
me that he
no,
didn't
it's
mind
staring
if
at a
people
bear,
thought
okay.
of him as cold or distant. He said that he knew that he was actually a vibrant and compassionate person, but that it takes time to really see that. It can be a very slow climb to get there.
Run a shop selling your own organs strategically to make the most money before you die. Oh, hey, I was reading. Nothing back there.
Well, this is new for Coda. It's an actual puzzle.
Is it
Go ahead and see if you can solve it.
Ready, set, fish. Oh. Okay, can't go back up there. What if I walk backwards? Wait, what? No, wrong way. No, that doesn't work. Oh, I bet I know. If I'm wrong, this is gonna be real awkward getting locked in here. Oh. Let myself out.
Don't forget that solution, because we're going to see this puzzle again soon.
Okay.
We're gonna see it a lot.
Lock yourself in around 3 dots. I wonder what the dots are.
I think Esteban has the exact same thing.
They're very interesting dots. I mean, obviously he likes to just put the. Oh, you can even see there's a different like, whatchamacall, color right there. Can I close it? Nope.
So that seems to be it, right? You walk down a corridor, you solve a puzzle, you get to the end. Simple enough. All right, now I'm going to modify the game again so that when you press enter, it'll remove all of the walls from this room.
Do I want to click enter right away, or do I want to look around more? There's no switches. Unless these things are switches. No. Oh. Well, I didn't click enter.
How about that? There was more to it than we had any way of knowing. I actually find it funny that this game comes after the Stairs game, since they essentially convey the opposite idea. So, in the Stairs game, a dull exterior concealed a rich interior. And then, in this level, a dull interior hides this fantastic outer world. Either way, I think that the point is the same, is that most of the time you don't get to know what you're missing, or even that you're missing anything. That's not your role as a player. So if your role here is not to understand, then what is it?
Exiting. But I just entered.
Aha! So, this, combined with the entering game from earlier, tells us that Coda believes his games are connected somehow. It could even be that the Stairs game and the puzzle game are literally connected in between this and the entering game. There's a bigger picture that all of his games are meant to play a role in, some larger meaning that we won't be able to grasp until we've seen all of them. And once we have, we can step back and start to understand what exactly that bigger picture is.
Am I about to be fallen? Maybe not.
Let's talk about video game development for a second. Every video game runs on what's called an engine, which determines what the game can and cannot do. So in other words, the engine is a set of tools for game development. To make all of these games, Coda is using an engine called Source. Like all engines, Source has certain things that it does well, and it has certain things that it does poorly. One of the things that it does very well is boxy linear corridors. That's why so many of Coda's games are set in these large, flat, empty rooms, is just because he's working with what the engine does well. The tools available to the creator shape what kinds of creative work they're going to end up making.
Okay.
You might consider paying attention to the architecture in Coda's games to notice how they seem to stem from an engine that's very good at producing linear, boxy corridors.
Ooh. I was debating whether that would kill me or not. I figured it probably wouldn't. Whoop, I missed. What's that? Nope, nothing. Oh, I have to. Oh, there's glass. I was thinking for a moment, these looked kind of familiar, and I remember Esteban was playing Half-Life, and I'm pretty sure that was done in Source as well. Hey, I wanted to go that way. Oh, okay. Going back is not an option, nor is going that way.
This prison, funny enough, in Coda's original design, the doors stayed shut for a full hour before letting you go. If you don't mind, I think we're gonna skip that.
What?
This is something that he and I used to argue about a lot. You know, whether a game ought to actually be playable, whether it means anything if no one can get through it. And I would always defend that, you know, all this work goes into the game, why not make it playable and accessible? And so we just got into heated arguments over it, and there was one time that after one of these conversations, he went home, and a day or two later, he sent me a zip file entitled Playable Games that was full of hundreds of individual games, each of which was just an empty box that you walked around in and nothing else. Believe me, I played every single one of those just to find out if there was like a gag hidden somewhere. There wasn't.
It's funny that the light gets through in certain corners. Oh, there's the dots again. It's not as noticeable that that's like a asset in this one.
It's the puzzle again, with the exact same solution as the last time. There's still no clear indication of what makes this puzzle so special that Coda is going to return to it over and over. But I promise I'll share with you my interpretation very shortly. Here, Coda begins using a kind of dialogue system that he fashioned out of the engine's chat capabilities. Use the 1, 2, 3 buttons on your keyboard to respond.
Interesting. can't tell them. Goodbye. Hello, maybe. Ah, always been here.
And so we make one last descent down to the final floor of the level. It's a lamppost. Okay, I can't tell you quite why, but for some reason, Coda fixates on this lamppost. It's going to appear at the end of every single one of his games from here on out. I'll tell you what I think. I think that up to this point, he's been making really strange and abstract games with no clear purpose, and maybe you can only float around in that headspace for so long. Because now he wants something to hold on to. He wants a reference point. He wants the work to be leading to something. He wants a destination, which is what this lamppost is. It's a destination. We're going to see it in the work as well. His games are just going to become a lot more cohesive, a lot more fully developed, with more of a clear idea behind them. And as we go, that idea will get clearer and clearer and clearer.
Into the light.
Woo! I can see notes left by other players. It's just like Dark Souls. Oh wait, nice room. No.
It's exactly like Dark Souls.
So first off, I'm sure you can deduce this, but this game is not connected to the internet. All of the notes that you're gonna see have been written by Coda. This was actually the first game of his that I ever played. This was shortly after I met him at a weekend game jam in Sacramento, where I grew up. I saw him working on this very level, and it was just so different from anything that anyone else was doing. So right away I was like, I have to be friends with this person. In retrospect, I think I was probably a bit too pushy, trying to get his attention. I was over-enthusiastic. But he was very gracious about it and very patient with me. And I cooled off eventually. Oh, feel free to skip over any of these notes if they're not doing anything for you. Nothing extra is going to happen if you read all of them. Either way, to me they convey a sense of loneliness. I see this person who's filled with thoughts and feelings and beliefs and has no way to express them except as scattered and unheard voices in a game that wasn't meant to be played.
Ripping my eyes out.
But it's ironic, isn't it? That in playing this game and seeing how alone Coda often felt, that we get to know him better and actually kind of connect with him. And I have to be honest with you, this idea is really seductive to me. That I could just play someone's game and see the voices in their head and get to know them better and have to do less of the messy in-person socializing. I could just get to know you through your work. I think this is why I always liked Coda's games so much, is because it felt like they let me have that connection. I felt as though he was inviting me personally into his world. And then I feel less lonely too.
What the shit? Sailors are looking for the acorn. Tempted to jump off of that, but I want to see what's in here. Butts ass butt. Hell yeah. Need to go to the friggin' bathroom. Free t-shirt. Internal. Oh, it's just a misspelling of internal. This is where I get it. Ooh, I can jump. I want to jump to that. I don't think I can jump quite that far though, right? I want to see what people say about the painting. It's a lot of circles. Cannot fall off. This is one of those things that if I saw this in a freaking Dark Souls game, I would immediately assume that that means that I'm gonna launch myself to my death. Okay, I'm gonna read and then I'm gonna try and jump off just to see if it's telling the truth or not. Ert. I just realized, do you want me to stream this on Discord for you, dude?
No, you're good.
Okay.
It's a little bit of a delay, but not the end of the world.
Cabbage shapes our nation. Hell yeah. Alright. Time to find out if I can launch myself into the void. Whee! Nope.
At the end of this level, we're going to see the puzzle again. And here, I'll tell you what I think the puzzle means. Each of these games represents an idea that was on Coda's mind at the time that he was making it. And the puzzle is a way of closing the door on a previous chapter of his life before moving on to the next one. In each of his games, after exploring a theme that, he might find difficult, Coda can then place this puzzle that he knows has a reliable solution, he understands exactly how it works, and so it gives him a simple mechanism for moving on. And because there's this dark area between the doors, a space between spaces, before you move on, you get to pause. Just for a moment, a few seconds to reflect on and let go of the events that led you here. To step back and connect the pieces together. To grasp at that elusive bigger picture.
Oh, it's typewriters.
Okay, this one is tough. It's gonna kinda just spin its own wheels for a few minutes. Hang with it.
What if I want to see the wall? Alright. I like that design. It's nice. Yeah. I want to see what's up there. But, oh, no, it just ends. Okay. Nothing up there. Oh, back at the well.
See, like, this is it. The whole game. And there's nothing that's particularly interesting about it. You just walk to the end of a hallway. Except, for some reason, Coda gets really fixated on this prison that has all of this modern furniture. And I don't know why, but he decides he needs to revisit this prison. He's gonna start over, use the same assets, turn it into something else. Okay, cool. Here's version 2.
It's a little bit, what furniture ought to go in the center of the room? Ooh. Let's put a giant hole in the ground. What? Along the wall. Let's do a picture of a horse. Alright. I feel like my answers aren't being appreciated. Light up the room. Tesla coils, that sounds fun. Need a table. Ooh. Tables were invented in 1935.
This is a fact that we all know.
There's a bit more to this one, but still, it's not really communicating anything. It's kind of just weird for weirdness' sake. So, okay, he throws it out and starts over. This time he comes at the prison idea from a different direction.
I will walk forward. Guy will enable you to escape any prison environment. I see. Photo frame, okay. Still can't interact with the dots. Turn the floor lamp in the room off and on. Left side sofa, move it over a little. Touch the shelves. Over. Return to the start to go back to prison. Okay, just in case I need to remember, it was table, picture, light off and on, couch, shelf. Alright, send me back.
And of course, now the table is gone and you can't begin the chain of events to escape. Here's a version where there are no bars, but you can't actually get to the well. And then a version where the inside of the prison is the outside and the outside is the inside.
Whoa.
Let me just blink you real quick through a few more of these. I mean, he really unloaded on this prison idea. There's nearly a dozen of them. Personally, I think it's awful to watch this, to see a person basically unraveling through their work. And for what? Like, at what point do you just go, maybe there are game ideas other than this prison that I could be working on? But Coda doesn't have that voice telling you to stop, that particular mechanism of defense against yourself. Without it, you just spiral. And so he keeps going and going and going and going and going, and then he hits on something. And he likes it. And that's it. He's done. He stops making prisons. This is the very last version of the prison game that he created. And the reason I think it works is that the prison is not actually in it. It's a conversation. And so this is what Coda wants, is to be able to talk to someone, to share what's on his mind, and to get some good advice from someone who knows. But the irony is that even in this scenario, you're still talking to yourself. You know, all of these games so far are Coda talking to himself. I can see why he considers this a fitting conclusion to the prison games. After all of the obsession and frustration, just to be told by someone you can trust that things are going to be okay. Wouldn't that be nice? So what would it look like if Coda wanted to make a game about talking to someone other than himself? To me, this environment is meant to represent Coda's puzzle, with the two doors on either side and a dark transitional space between.
Yeah, spawning.
Luke playing the beginner's guide.
You'll notice that the quality of the art is a step up from previous games, including this new and improved chat system, which he started using from this point on. From here on out, he begins putting much more effort into the visual polish of his work, and this particular game took 2 months to create as a result.
Clean the table, Luke. Damn it. Clean your table.
I did clean the table. Now I can't find the frickin' room. This is very, Outer Wilds-esque. Sure.
After the intense set of prison games, this house cleaning level almost feels like cleansing. It's the moment after a particularly difficult or traumatic experience where you just need to let it sit and digest inside of you, and eventually cohere into something meaningful. I know that Coda really liked this game. Of all of his work, actually, this was the only one that he called me up to ask me to come over and look at it. This was during a period of a few months where he was like grossly happy all the time. Just walked around with a constant smile on his face.
Housekeeping.
Clean your room.
How does this keep happening?
I'm glad he made this. I'm glad he found some peace. But, of course, it can't last. The music stops, your companion is gone, it's time to leave. The door at the top of the hill is now open as well. Again, you can't stay in the dark space for too long. You just can't. You have to keep moving. It's how you stay alive. Which is the whole point of the puzzle doors, right? That sooner or later you have to pick up and move. I really thought that was the point of it. This one gets a bit goofy.
Perfect.
You're in Baker Science. How do you feel right now?
Oh no.
Horny. Baker Science.
Perfection is within my grasp. Whoa.
Look, did we have a science class in Baker together? The waves, particles.
About halfway through the game, the
Nah, I
perspective
never
shifts.
took waves and particles. Oh. That's disconcerting.
What's
And you
disconcerting?
play as the teacher. And suddenly, you discover that your
Nothing.
teacher is just as bigoted and afraid as you are. Oh, and also you can move around the classroom now.
Kids should not follow their dreams. Drinking is not hurting my life. Felt like a cyst. Let's see what happens if I say one of the yellow ones. Holy shit, you guys. Everyone run!
I fell pretty hard for this one. I feel like it's one of the most relatable experiences that you can have. To assume that some other person is perfect and totally fulfilled in every way, and completely miss all of the little flaws that make them painfully human. I think about this game a lot these days.
Serious?
Is there a table?
This one took a lot longer than all the others for Coda to make. It was 4 months between this and the last one. That's twice as long as it took him to make any other game before this, and it's not like it's particularly complex, so I remember I found that a little strange at the time.
I can't do the prison escaping puzzle. Wow. Yeah, this definitely looks a lot nicer than some of the previous ones. Alright, what am I doing on stage? Whoa. Oh god, oh no. Gotta lean against the wall.
Flashbang.
Where's the bathroom? I'm super scared right now. I like you. Here are all my hopes and dreams. Bounce when you touch them? What? Ooh, I like it.
Bling, bling, blong.
I like the noise. the stage I go. Oh. Wait. No, do I have to go? Oh, oh, whoa, okay. Behind the scenes. Ah, back in prison. No!
The game ends with this eerie premonition of what's going to happen next in Coda's life. The solution, social anxiety, to fears of having to perform and having to chase success, the answer for Coda is to withdraw, to hide himself away. Which is what leads to scenarios like the stairs that slowed you down several games ago, where it just becomes harder and harder to access Coda's inner landscape because he keeps retreating. He just keeps backing away from possible connections to anyone other than himself. And to be honest, I didn't consider it very healthy when I first played this game. You know, it looked to me like he was trying to justify the idea of just disconnecting yourself from the world. And that wasn't what I wanted for him or for his games. Because I feel like a lot of his games are inviting me to connect with this person, to bring him closer. But what can you do? After this, Coda went off and took another 5 months to make a new game.
All right, I'm gonna close my eyes. I have no idea what's happening. Okay, it sounds like I'm moving.
Good.
I don't know. Oh god. I can't tell if I'm moving or if there's nothing on the screen right now and this is all just a joke.
You're moving.
Nope. Something happened.
You should probably open your eyes if you haven't already.
What?
It's pretty much impossible to solve otherwise. And there is a solution, by the way.
Okay. Hey, it's the Whisper again. Oh, and we're done. Oh. How do I get up there? Okay, okay.
Into the wall.
Truth.
Like I said, I was getting concerned. First off, he's never been this explicit in his work about exactly what he's thinking. So where's that coming from? But then even weirder, his work has potentially stopped being an outlet for him. Not like he's having trouble iterating on ideas, but he literally just can't think of new ideas anymore. And in person, he was being a lot more distant than usual. Like, you know how sometimes a person will just deflect anything that you say in order to keep themselves disconnected all the time? It was that kind of thing. Here was the point in my relationship with Coda where I really started to wonder if he needed my help in some way. His games are going to get more desperate from here on out. After this game, it's almost 6 months before he finishes something new.
Same color as truth.
If the last game featured Coda talking explicitly about his creative frustrations, this one turns it up to 11. Now, put yourself in my shoes playing this. Here's a friend whose work is exhibiting signs of struggle, frustration, anxiety, depression, even. And yet, still, he keeps making games. He keeps throwing himself into the grinder even when he clearly doesn't have the energy for it anymore. Why? What is it for? Because from my perspective at the time and just what I knew of him, this was a result of how isolated he was. He was in his own little bubble, just sitting at his computer all day, not really showing these games to anyone, not releasing them onto the internet, and so he didn't have anyone outside of himself to connect with. He had no outlet to ground himself on. You can't talk yourself out of loneliness. It doesn't work that way. You can't be the one writing both the questions and the answers. Then there's no movement. Then there's no circulation. If all of your anxieties are being channeled into your work, then if the work ever fails, you have no backup and you're just going to crash. Seeing this game at the time that he made it, it looked really unhealthy to me. I was watching him do this to himself, and I hated it. I hated seeing him so trapped. It's like, video games are not worth this amount of suffering. This is someone I really cared about. And I used to get so much joy out of seeing him create. For him to suddenly become angry and frustrated like this, it was the worst thing for me. I don't know. This is what I felt at the time. I don't know how else to explain it. I wanted it to stop more than anything. I had never felt so rotten. I needed more than I had ever needed anything for this to stop. But it didn't stop. After finishing this one, Coda takes another 7 months and comes up with a new game.
Are you streaming right now?
Mm-hmm. I'm not saying much because there's a lot of narration in the game.
I see.
And of course, it's the machine.
shouldn't be laughing at this, but giving me the gun from that game is funny.
So now the work is becoming self-destructive. And I'll tell you, at the time that I first played this game, shortly after he made it, here's what I'm thinking to myself. I'm thinking that code is stuck in his own head, and that it's having a very negative effect on him, and that all he needs to do is just start showing his work to people, to get some actual feedback on his games. It might get him out of isolation. And so, as I'm thinking this, I realize that I could be the one to initiate it. Because it would never occur to Coda to start actively soliciting feedback, so what if I did it for him? If he could see the difference it would make to have more actual conversations with other human beings, would that bring him out of his mental spiral? Would it give him confidence in himself? Would it bring meaning back into his work? So I started showing Coda's work to people. I took this one, and the islands which you just played, the theater, the notes, the house cleaning game, and some of the prison escape games. I brought them to people that I knew and trusted. I asked their opinions. And the great part is that they really loved his games. You know, the point of it all was just to give him some external reference point, but they genuinely loved his work. There was nothing for him to be afraid of. Can you see why I felt like this was the right thing to do? Because it's the thing that I always feel like I need, to be told that my work is good, that I am good. When someone really connects with a thing that I've made, when they see themselves purely in my work, there's nothing that feels better. And I got to give that very same feeling to my friend. I did something, I really felt like I'd done something good, like I was a good person. I felt like there was a friend who was in trouble and was unhappy and maybe didn't like themselves, and I could fix it. If I could give him this gift, maybe I could fix the problem. When they told me how much they enjoyed his games, it was the best feeling. It was the absolute best feeling. It made me feel so happy, so beautifully, beautifully happy. So anyway, Coda finishes this game, and then really he just kind of takes off for a while. So this is June of 2011, and I didn't hear anything from him for several weeks, I guess. And so out of nowhere, one day I get an email, and it's got a private link to a new game of Coda's. This one is called The Tower, and to my knowledge, it's the last game that Coda ever made. So let's take a look.
This level legitimately, like, I can, you know that weird feeling where you get that's like you feel like someone is closing around your throat, but they're not? This level gives me that feeling.
And this is where I have trouble saying anything meaningful about Coda's work. Because more than anything else, the tower just feels distant. It feels like it's trying to distance itself from the world. It's a very cold game. This room actually has a maze in it.
Whoa.
Except that all the walls of the maze are invisible. And then every time you touch one of the walls, there's this awful flashing and noise, so the experience is really miserable. The game goes beyond not being meant to be played, it actually seems to despise the player for trying to play it at all. But I do want to show you the rest of the levels, so when you're ready to continue, press enter and I'll put a bridge over the maze.
In an effort to not hurt anyone that has epilepsy that watches this, I'm just gonna do that. So I'm sure I would knock into those walls a bunch more.
And to be fair, it's not like this is the first game that's needed some modification to be playable. Like the house cleaning game. You know, that one used to actually loop the cleaning chores and you just cleaned a house forever. I had to cut it off so that you could exit the house and the game would actually end. But that game had an idea that it was actually trying to communicate. What's the deeper idea behind the invisible maze? The only way past this challenge is to randomly guess the 6-digit code. Like the invisible maze, it's frustrating to me, because it's the opposite of everything else that Coda has made. It doesn't encourage thought or engagement. It doesn't ask anything of me, except a lot of my time. If I could have reached him during this time, then maybe I could have asked him, but I couldn't. I still don't really understand why this is here. I'll put the code on the ground for you here, though, so that we can move on.
Nope. Clicked too much.
Good guess.
I figured a random shot in the dark was as good as I was gonna get with this many digits.
The switch to open this door is actually on the other side of the door, meaning that it's literally impossible to solve from this side. So even if you somehow brute forced your way through the first 2 challenges and you got to this point, there's actually just no way to progress. And it's scary for me, the idea of Coda cutting himself off entirely, just saying, you know, that's it, that's the end of the conversation, not giving me any way to fix the problem. I feel like a failure, I guess, when I can't fix the problem. But I can open this door for you, so let me do that.
Yeah.
Was I a failure for not understanding this game? I mean, I don't know why I would be. It's not like everything needs to have a solution, but I feel it somehow. I feel like I failed, and I don't understand why. I remember, it's June of 2011, I'm playing this for the very first time, and as I'm playing, I'm thinking to myself, I don't know this person. I have no idea who this person is. It wasn't the guy I knew, it wasn't my friend. I had come to so many conclusions from looking at all of his work up to this point, and then suddenly none of them... I had been trying to, though, that was the thing. For years, I was trying to get to know him, to understand who he actually was and what he stood for. I asked him so many times to please just tell me what his games mean to him. I asked him please to tell me what the 3 dots mean. And he wouldn't. I just felt so strongly that if I could have connected with him, that if I could have somehow made his work my own, that I would finally be once and for all happy. It was that I needed to see myself in someone else. I needed to be someone other than me. But he stopped and left, and it felt somehow like I had failed. Where did I screw up? I'm the reason that you stopped making games, aren't I? It's because of what I did. I poisoned it for you. I don't think I ever told you this, but when I took your work and I was showing it to people, it actually felt... it felt as though I were responsible for something important and valuable. And the people who played them, they treated me like I was important. They really listened and cared about what I had to say. Even though I was showing your work, I felt good about myself. Finally. For a moment, while I had that, I liked myself. And then you stopped, and I didn't have anything left to show people. I just had to be with myself. And as soon as that happened, there was no feeling at all. Nothing. Less than nothing. What does that mean? I'm afraid that I did something really stupid because I don't like myself. That's why I'm releasing this collection of your work, is because I haven't been able to find any other way to reach you. I've tried everything. And so a part of me has hope that if I put this compilation out into the world, and if I put my name on it, that maybe enough people will play it so that it'll find its way to you, so that I can tell you that I'm sorry. I know I screwed up. If I apologize to you truly and deeply, will you start making games again? Please, I need to feel okay with myself again. And I always felt okay as long as I had your work to see myself in. I mean, is something wrong with me? Because I know that I did an awful thing, and I'm doing it again right now. Like, I'm showing people your work, but I can't stop myself from doing it. That's how badly I need to feel something again, like I'm an addict. There has to be something wrong with me. Can I apologize? What if I tell you I was wrong? Will that work? Will that fix it? I don't know. I don't think it will, but there's nothing else that I can do. Just tell me what you want. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please, start making games again. Please help me. Please give me some of whatever it is that makes you complete. I want whatever that wholeness is that you just summoned out of nothing and you put into your work. You were complete in some way that I never was. And I want to know I want to know how to be a good person. I want to know how not to hate myself. Please. I'm fading, and all I want is to know that I'm going to be okay. More love, more praise, more people telling me that I'm good. Always more. It's like a disease. Solution. I guess if someone had told me ahead of time that he just really enjoyed making prison games, maybe I wouldn't have thought he was so desperate. I wouldn't have told so many people that he was depressed. Maybe he just likes making prisons. Even now, the disease is telling me to stop. Don't show people what a shitty person you are. They'll hate you. If I knew that my life depended on finding something to be driven by other than validation, what would that even be? It's strange, but the thought of not being driven by external validation is unthinkable. Like, I actually cannot conceive of what that would be like. What now? I think I need to go. And I'm sorry, because I know that I said that I would be here and I would walk you through this, but I'm starting to feel like I have a lot of work to do. I have a lot that I need to make up for, and so I'm just gonna... Okay.
It's time to ascend again.
now do you understand why I had to like lay on the floor after finishing this
Let
game?
me prove that
Yeah.
I'm brave. Let me keep
It's a real punch and a half.
going.
Right when I started the game, I remember watching
But the
this. I didn't remember all the exact details, but I remembered some of what it was, but figured I shouldn't say much about it. Just kind of go through it.
Had you seen a playthrough of it before?
Yeah. But like I said, years ago. So
Yeah.
about a minute. Yeah, I cheated. I'm fairly certain I watched this when I just didn't buy games almost at all, so I had no chance of playing it in my mind.
Fair enough. It is very similar to Outer Wilds in that way. Once you play it, or once you know it,
Hmm.
the way that I was describing it to Esteban is like, it's not the same as Outer Wilds. It's very different from Outer Wilds, but it invokes like I think the way it sits with you is the same, and then the fact that it's not it's the perfect expression of video games. It's art, I think, one of them. You know, there's a couple of different versions of that, but it's great. I love it.
Yeah, it's good. Part of me does wonder whether it's about art or just, presumably
I think
Coda's
it's
a real
l-
person, but like games for the
well,
sake
no,
of
no.
games.
Oh, so that's a very important part of this game. This is not a real story.
Okay.
So this is a fictional story, but it is constructed in a way that is very much so intended for you to think on a first playthrough, not knowing what's happening, that it is.
Gotcha.
That's like a very, very important kind of piece to the entire puzzle. And I agree. I don't think that the game itself is about art, but I think that the game is a perfect expression of video games as an art, more so. But it's, in my mind, and this is totally me, speaking about the game, which, again, this is such a hard game to speak about because you risk committing the cardinal sin that it's arguing against when you speak about it. But
Putting a lamppost.
it's trying to derive a message or feelings either about the creator or think something that like the creator wanted you to believe or something from the work. Like the work, in my mind, the most important part of this game is that the message that it's trying to say is that any form of artwork, but it is or media, but it's using video games in this case. When you're criticizing them, or when you're reviewing them, or when you're enjoying them, no matter what your feelings are, good or bad, you should not derive or extrapolate like any of what it's telling you to its creator. Like you shouldn't play. Like, I'm trying to think of a good example. Like, what's a really, really depressing game? You shouldn't play.
It's like not a game, but Junji Ito.
That's a perfect example. No, that's a perfect example of like he makes the creepiest, most weird, deranged shit, and then he's like the happiest, most go-lucky guy. In actuality, but the inverse of that is fucking
Miyazaki.
Miyazaki. I mean, at least in the way that he interacts with the public. It's just like, wait, so you make all this colorful, awesome, really great shit that's like super happy, and then what?
To be fair,
No,
he
but
also
it-
did Grave of the Fireflies at some point.
Oh,
Was that
totally.
him?
That movie is, yeah, it is, and that movie is.
Oh.
Is it not?
Luke's
I thought it
saying
was.
not. I know it's Ghibli. You're a little too quiet for me to fully hear.
Oh, you're right.
That
It's Isao Takahata.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, never mind. I'm wrong.
Similar style. I thought it was, but no, I get what you're saying. It's in my mind that's like the very obvious and blatant message about it, and like this story goes to a very extreme level of saying as a viewer you can poison the experience for the creator. But in my mind, because I come at it from multiple perspectives. I come at it from the perspective of someone who loves experiencing art, but I also come at it from the perspective of someone who is writing a fucking book. So there's two sides that I view from it, and it's like I don't know. It's just there's a lot going on that it's talking about that you kind of have to think about, because in a lot of ways we are Davy in this story, or in this when we're I've got a top 10 list of video games in my Steam library. When I've got that top 10 list, like I am innately judging and critiquing those games, and now I'm critiquing them in a very good way. Like I've said that those are in my top 10 games, but I have a list of like games that I don't like, and so it's stressing the importance of separating that from the creator. I think that's the big thing that I take away from it. And then how as a consumer of something, not doing that can be very dangerous.
Not judging something can be dangerous?
If you start extrapolating things about the creator from the work itself, that is a very, very like one example that Esteban and I talked about, and I thought was really good analogy is, and it is one thing I love about D&D is people make their own characters, and a lot of times, not all the time, a lot of times though, especially I feel like with newer D&D players, there will be people find it easier when they're starting out in role playing to interject some amount of themselves in their characters, but conversely, some people like to separate themselves and make a character that's completely not like them to be able to play something else. Like that's, for example, I always talk about how I play in RPGs. If I have the option, I almost always play female characters. Well, part of that is by playing a character of an opposite gender, I am creating a separation from myself to the character, so I can role play that character in any number of ways, and I feel less, and not obligated isn't the right word, but less inclined to interject my own personality that I otherwise might. Which is not a bad thing. Like some people really enjoy experiencing it, but that's my point, is different people experience that different ways. And so me going into a D&D campaign with new players or something, and then extrapolating things about these people from their character is not a right thing to do. That's not giving them the credit that they deserve as people and as a players enjoying that medium. In my mind, that's definitely just something that is like worth being very cognizant about, especially with someone that loves, whether it's tabletop, whether it's video games, like role-playing shit. That's my bag. I love it. I think it's so cool. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, but I agree. I think it's generally bad to make assumptions about people, but it becomes a lot easier when they make something and share it with people.
Totally. And as Davey says in this, it's extremely, like, there's a sense of gratification that you can get out of it. Especially if, like, you think about something and then you guess right, or you think you guessed right. That is I'm trying to remember what words he uses in the game. It's like, it's seductive, I think, or something.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I think I fucking love as a writer, love about this game, is it's small, especially on like rewatches, the small injections that you see where you start to realize that Davey is not like a quote unquote good character in this situation. Now, do I think, I'm not gonna. I think there's. It's interesting. There's definitely some like video essays and things I've seen that completely take the guy to the woodshed, and I'm like, that kind of is also defeating the purpose of what it's trying to say a little bit in my mind. But, like when you're in the middle space and you are sorting the house, and he talks about how that was Coda at his happiest, and he uses the language, this was the point in his life where he was so grossly happy. It's like on the first watch through, especially as for me, like I'm someone that likes to think optimistically, think the best of people until they show me a reason otherwise. I didn't think anything about that on the first watch through, but then on the second and third and fourth time that I kind of like looked through it, like you pick up on that and you're just like, oh, that was a very intentional decision to like use that languaging from Davey of like disgustingly happy or like grossly happy, because that's a inherently negative connotation, even though he's talking about, oh, my friend was really happy. And you don't realize until the end that he's like saying, well, my friend is really happy and I'm not, and that upsets me. But you don't know that that's the place that Davey's coming from until the very end. And at that point, you've probably forgotten about that little one word that they throw in there. But I just think that's like an example that this game does. It's brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Of kind of building out both characters, both Coda and Davey. It's fascinating.
Yeah. On a slightly unrelated note, I think it's cool how he pushes the narrative of all that with like the initial games, even regardless of how dumb and like quote unquote unplayable they are, like they're all fun to do stuff in, and then by the time you get to the tower, it's like, well, this is a game. It is playable. And
It is
yeah,
right.
It sucks. There's a lot of joy in just like whatever. It's a room and you get to walk around in it.
Well, and yeah, it's that's the whole argument that Coda and Davey in the story had. Is that a game? Because in Davey's mind, the tower is not. The tower is belligerently and intentionally unplayable without altering the game. It's unplayable to go through that. And so Davey would say that is not a game. Coda would say, fuck it.
Well,
it is.
Wouldn't from their initial perspectives, wouldn't it up until the unmovable room be a game in Davey's eyes? Because it is solvable.
Right.
It's just obviously very impossibly hard.
It's just antagonistic. But then by virtue of not having, in Davey's mind, the game at some point, one needs to have an end and two needs to have a solution.
Yeah.
Like those are two things that he says throughout that are very important to him in his mind of making a game.
Yeah.
Right. Like his Davey's point is like, oh, a game has to have a meaning of some sort. And I am a culprit of this. It's very easy to try and apply meaning to everything. Like when I'm writing, it's focusing on every single little detail and making sure that it's, down to that. And in some ways that can be good, and in certain mediums that can be very good. And in some ways, like, why is this is a fun example. Why is Space Marine 2, I think, so popular right now? One of the biggest compliments that game is getting is that it's just dumb fun. It's just Xbox 360 fun. There's meaning in it. It's not the most complicated thing in the world. Every character is not super complex and has different sides, and the bad guy's actually kind of a good guy, but like, well, he actually has a point here. Like, no, it's about you go, you shoot some bugs, you have some fun with your buddies, and you call it a day. Like that, there's meaning in that.
Yeah.
But it's a different it's a different approach to it. And I do think that this is a little bit of a side tangent, not quite as connected directly to the themes in this, but I think that is a culprit of sort of just the information age that we live in now, of there being so much information accessible to everyone and you being able to have it at your fingertips immediately, that everyone in everything is looking for a deeper, like there's always more, there's always another swipe, there's always a next thing. And so if something Coda just likes making prison games. Simple as that. But people are digging for something more. And, I think that's one of my biggest takeaways, honestly, from this game, is that sitting back and experiencing and enjoying the art without digging for that further meaning can be one of the best parts about experiencing the art itself. Is you don't need to impose yourself in it. You don't need to try and extrapolate something else from it. You don't need to think that there's a deeper meaning behind it. There might be, and you might gain enjoyment from that and depth from that. And when there is, that's great, but there isn't always that. And manufacturing that when it's not there is a slippery slope, for sure.
Yeah, I'm definitely a person that's guilty of that kind of stuff, because I am very much so. If you tell me there is a secret, but then don't tell me what the secret is, it drives me nuts. And I think I've gotten a little better about that, but oh God, this haunts me to this day, and I don't think I should put this on the internet, but whatever, I'm gonna say it.
You don't have to.
Well, when I say that, I just mean that I know other people will know this now. In elementary school, there was a day where a kid brought cards to school, right? Playing cards, and he was doing all these magic tricks with them. He's like, he could tell you what your card was and all that. That was the primary one. And I was just sitting there, like, elementary school me, and I'm like, there's a trick. There's some sort of trick. I know there's a trick.
I know there's a trick.
And I annoyed the hell out of him. The only reason I think he told me how it worked was because I probably bugged him about it all day. And I think back on that, I'm like, oh man, like doing that with everything would suck.
Wait a minute.
Feel bad. The cards were marked. They just had little marks on them that if you knew the symbols, then you could tell everything. But yeah.
Yeah, I know. I mean, and there's so much. Me speaking about this game right now is me, in a way, committing its sin of diving deeper into it. But I think it's different. The reason that I am okay speaking about it in this way is I think there isn't anything wrong with talking about art and how it impacted you. That, I think, is totally a valid and genuine thing to speak about. That is not... like, everyone is entitled to their opinion about it, and especially, in my mind, a piece of art is generally defined as that. It's something that's put out in space for you to be able to make an impression on. Now, whatever that form is, whatever it is, it's... I think it's just a really... Oh, I lost my train of thought. But...
You're good.
My soapbox moment.
You're good. Yeah, I agree. I don't know. I think that... it's funny because I was thinking about this earlier. Like, yeah, in talking about this, if the game was made to not say anything, then yeah, we're doing it a disservice. But in my mind, that's like paradoxical almost.
Yeah, I don't think it's built to say that. I will say, there's this YouTuber that I don't watch a ton of his stuff, but he has had some insightful things that I do appreciate. Do you know Vaush or something, or Bosch? I think it's actually how you say it. It's a YouTuber.
No.
I'd say a whole bunch of his stuff is actually political, and that's kind of a different conversation entirely. But he does have kind of a spoiler-free review of The Outer Wilds that is fucking great. And one thing that he talks about in there is how he defines good media, And I actually agree with the statement that he said. And what's funny is I wrote an essay back in like my first college English class about it without having seen this, and it kind of echoes a very similar sentiment. But his languaging is much more direct, and so I've totally stolen it because it's the same opinions expressed in a much cleaner way. But his thought on people sharing media or creators is, you know, to judge if a piece of media is good, there's two things that you want to look at. It's, you know, did the creators, when they were making this piece of art, you know, did they successfully convey something that they were trying to get across? Mm-hmm. And then the second part is, was that a good thing to do? Or was that a good thing to express? So it's the objectivity of, did they express a message? You know, as Esteban said in the chat, is a little bit paradoxical in this of like, well, what is the message of? You don't want to say that message is tied directly to who's writing it, but for the most part, most pieces of art that are created are trying to convey something, a message of some sort.
That presumably that
even if that message is, I like prison games. Like that is a message. It doesn't feel like a satisfying one to some people, but it is.
It's also not obvious.
But it's right. But it's the objective. Yeah, and maybe in that mind, you know, using that criteria, you would say, oh well, that wasn't a very good game, but it wasn't. Its intent wasn't for you. You know. I think that the first step, even before you get into this conversation, is, were you the target audience? Yeah. The target audience of that prison game was probably just Coda. You know, and that's totally fine. You know, so it's like, I think that's an important step. One is, what is the target audience? You know, and then two, did they successfully convey a message to that audience? And three, the subjective part of art, and I think that's what's so great about art, is that it interjects subjectivity to it. Mm-hmm. You know, you are allowed to make your own impressions on it. That's what we were talking about earlier. You know, it's that personal, I want to speak how this impacted me. And that's the subjective part that you can then talk about is, you know, was that a good thing to do, to go after? And I think that's a really, really good way of looking at different pieces of mediums.
Yeah.
When I'm quite not understanding because I don't have a lot of context on the game. How is the commentary of the game specific to games rather than media in general?
If you want to
for it, Luke.
Okay. Yeah. So the game that you're playing is said to be a collection of games made by someone else. And so you are just playing these games throughout the entire thing, and the narrator is talking about how he perceived these games and how he interacted with the actual person that made them, essentially. So it only ever talks about games.
Yeah, the narrator is basically coming to you as, you know, the person that has these games, and he is sharing them with you. So it's the beginner's guide. The reason that I first played it was I was kind of in a rut in writing my own book, and there was this video that Thor Pirate Software on YouTube had talking about. He said, if you're a creator and like you know you're stuck, you know, play the beginner's guide. It's an awesome game about someone creating something for someone else. And I totally was going in thinking, oh, well, it's an hour and a half. Like, this will be perfect because it's like, I've got some writer's block. Like, that's totally what it's going to target. It doesn't target that. Like, it's not about writer's block, but it's very extremely valuable in a very different way for both creators and for viewers. You know, in a lot of ways, it's, in my mind, comforting that even though it can be taken in a negative way and be poisonous back towards the creator, it's very powerful in art that you can express things to people. Mm-hmm. Now, that doesn't need to say anything about me. That's the separation that the game says you have to have. But there was still a message that you were carrying across.
Yeah.
That was deliberate. So,
And like you said, I think by and large, a lot of times people are trying to say something with what they're making.
right. In with everything, you know. And I think that's what's so cool about it. This speaks directly of video games. I think that you can view different forms of art, you know, in a similar light, even though they use different tactics.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Lucas, to your point, the game only talks about video games. I'm just blithering on like a dumbass because that's what I do.
I mean, to be fair, this is, in my mind, this is the most interesting part. I mean, obviously, if people haven't seen the game before, it's interesting, but just hearing what people have to say about it and how they feel and react is all going to be interesting. I couldn't quite hear what that was.
If you heard me say something, that was because I was saying something on my.
Oh, okay. Cool.
No, it totally is. I mean, that's also why, like, the reason that I go for it.
I was just thinking one thing. I mean, I'm not quite grasping all this conversation because I still don't understand the game all that well. But I like thinking about, you know, the author's intention with their narrative and with their themes and whatnot. And I can find that depending on who's experiencing that game or that media and what the person experienced it, what their intent is, definitely changes every aspect of that experience, is what I found for myself.
Absolutely.
Depending on what I'm looking for. And so, I'm just saying that because it's somewhat relevant. I have no idea how
No,
that
it
fits into the game, but
it totally is. And the way that fits into the game is it's saying that is a really, really great and awesome and powerful thing about games and just any medium of art. But what you don't want to have happen is you coming to the table and feeling this way about that media, then color what you think the creator is like or what their thoughts are. You know, they had.
So now I'm quite understanding. It's very specific about extending the experience of the game into making
Right.
assumptions
In a
about
very
the creator.
very extreme manner. In my book, there's a character that is suicidal at a certain point. The danger that this game kind of showcases is then extrapolating that, saying, oh, well, this main character thinks this. Oh, I'm worried about the creator because they wrote this in such a deep and in-depth way that I connected with and resonated with that, well, they have to feel this way because they wrote it like this, and I feel this way and then they wrote it. That is the dangerous thing. It's not a dangerous thing to then have a personal inflection on that character, but it is a dangerous thing to then say that creator is depressed. They might be, they might not. You don't know. That's kind of the point.
I think
But yeah, go for it.
you could even almost take it one step further it's almost always dangerous to say definitively what someone is trying to say with what they make.
Right. True.
Obviously,
That's very true.
you gotta. There's a line to be drawn, I think, at some point where it's like there's certain things that are pretty obvious, and it's ultimately people are going to make those assumptions almost no matter what. But yeah, it's like with Davy's game, even if you pull that away from just Davy, like going to someone and saying like this game is about depression, it's like, well, that's not necessarily true.
Right. Yeah. There is nothing wrong with expressing your thoughts and how you interacted with the media and what it made you feel. There is something, it's a different story if you suddenly say this is either what it definitely had to make people feel or, you know, like I love Outer Wilds. I adore that game.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a lot of opinions about the Outer Wilds. and those are great. It's awesome that the Outer Wilds has given me those feelings and how I experienced that. But me then taking it to Lucas, for example, who hasn't played the game, and saying, watching him play through it and saying, "Oh, you have to feel this way."
Mm-hmm.
That's also not cool, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Which, funnily, I've talked to someone who has tried playing Outer Wilds, and they're like, I didn't love it. Like, people say it's amazing, and I just got frustrated. And I was like, that kind of made me stop, because I was like, I agree, I loved the game, and I know you loved the game, but I kind of bought into, like, everyone's going to love this game. That's not true. Like,
Right.
if you don't love puzzles, you're going to hate Outer Wilds.
Yeah, there's a good chance that you're gonna hate Outer Wilds, and like there's people that I've heard of that played it, and like I've heard people that couldn't finish it because they were genuinely like afraid of space. Fully understand that fear. Like Outer Wilds plays on your fears a lot.
100%. The noise
and-
in the freaking
Right.
bramble scared me a lot. It made me
Yeah.
jump all the time.
The noise, it's a very, yeah. But where I was kind of going with the Outer Wilds is I don't think that the Outer Wilds, like the Outer Wilds, in my opinion, has a very, very positive outlook on things, whereas the Beginner's Guide is kind of like a more of a, for lack of a better term, like the way I viewed it was like a shaming sesh in a lot of
Yeah.
ways on a certain perspective and way to consume media. But why I kind of put them together is, one, I think that they're perfect examples of you could not take the Beginner's Guide or the Outer Wilds and put it in any other form of art, and it would work. You couldn't make an Outer Wilds or a Beginner's Guide movie. You could make me feel the same way with messages from them, but you would have to do it in a very different way. You couldn't just take, like, you could take The Witcher, in my opinion, and turn it into a movie. They were books. Like, you can take The Witcher, you can take Mass Effect, and make it a TV series. And it might not have quite as much of an impact as I had with it, but you could do it and make it really good. The Outer Wilds and the Beginner's Guide, I think, are so cool because they are quintessential video games. Like, they are experiences, even though the Beginner Guide is a walking sim, and I think the Outer Wilds is a much more fun tactile game to play, in my opinion. Like, I enjoy the tactility of playing Outer Wilds.
Yeah.
Whereas the Beginner's Guide is a walking sim. Nothing against that, but it is. But I don't think you would have the same impact with the Beginner's Guide by just sitting there, you know, by having to physically go through and solve the puzzle and things like that. You know,
Yeah.
It's a little bit, there's a little bit more involved to it. That I just think there's some feelings that it gives you or there's feelings that I got playing it. I should rephrase this. There's feelings that I got playing it that I would not be able to experience from another form of media.
Almost talked yourself into a corner there.
I totally did. And that's what's so dangerous about the Beginner's Guide, and every single video essay and review that I've watched about it talks about that. It's just like, it's so fucking hard to talk about this game without falling into its trap. Like, it's really, really easy to talk about this game and fall into the very thing that it's telling you not to do.
Hard to say anything without saying what it says.
Exactly. So it's you know, it's challenging that way. But
Yeah.
love both games.
Yeah.
Fantastic first experiences. Really hard to replay, but on subsequent watch-throughs and playthroughs and things like that, you can experience different perspectives, I think.
Fun to see
on
how other
both,
people.
which is why I put them together. I mean, shit, that's like, there are so many people in the outer, like, I told Esteban this, when he plays Outer Wilds and we record those VODs, like, shit, post that stuff onto the subreddit, onto the
boy.
Outer Wilds subreddit, people eat that shit up. Like, they are fiending for first playthroughs constantly of that game.
Definitely.
It's good
Looking
shit.
forward to that. It'll be fun. Cool. Well, we've been yapping. So I think that's probably a good place to cut it off, unless you have other thoughts that you want to add.
No, I'm just talking circles. I've been talking circles for minutes.
That's fine. Or I think it'll be a more impactful piece of art that we put out there now. Us yapping.
Hooray!
Sweet. Well, we only have 2 viewers, so I'm not going to read anyone. But anyone that sees this, we appreciate it. Thank you. Anyone that watched this,
Right.
also fun. Thanks for hanging out, even if you were just lurking. It's all good. We'll be maybe back. No, wait, what day? I don't know if I'll be, or I won't be here tomorrow. I don't know what Esteban's up to.
I'm not.
He might.
I'm not here the rest of I'm not here Thursday, Friday.
Okay. We'll probably
Saturday,
do
so.
Monster Hunter on Thursday then, or something like that. Maybe Deadlock. We'll see. But yeah. That's that.